Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and Diablo 4. I'm back for a new build video today for Necromancer, only it's a bit different from the normal build videos. Usually I'm covering a meta pick or making something as strong as possible. Well, maybe we're making a new build that serves an interesting niche. But today I'm covering full minions as a build in Season 2, something few people seem to have done. Why is that? Well, because wow, is this hard to make work, let alone be competitive in any way. Despite that, I have made it so we can clear a tier 100, which certainly is something when we're talking about a real full minion build. Not a shadow damage over time build that happens to have skeletons, or a bone storm build that happens to have a golem. This is where you have all your minions and they themselves are dealing the main source of damage, you know, like a necromancer. But first, a quick reminder to you guys. We've been sponsored by the awesome app Mobilytics to bring you written versions of our builds. You can find them linked in the description of all our build videos, linking you straight to a detailed showcase of the build you see today and the rest. There's all the info from the aspects to run, to class specific stuff, the new Vampiric Powers, the Paragon, the skill tree and more, all with short explanations of what and why to refer to. The in-game app also features an overlay, letting you press Tab plus Q and you'll bring up everything on the side there to refer to super conveniently. They've even got event timers to track what's going on next and when, and more features in the app like tier lists and build planners. The app is completely free to download and try, just click the link in the description and get started with it. In any case, for the full minion build we are indeed able to clear tier 100 level content. Unfortunately the DPS is much lower than your other necromancer builds and that really holds it back. Despite the awesome fact that I can consistently have bone storms going, your golem power, insane amount of CC, the damage even when it pops off just isn't doing enough by current standards. It amounts to a slow clear that is, very possible to achieve, and it was basically impossible in pre-season, so it's a lot better, but it's still far from where it should be, where it needs to be. The thing is, Adam Jackson, the guy that's in charge of class balance, he made this post on Twitter about necromancers. He's asking about the amount of power minions have in relation to the player, meaning should the minions have the power or the player? It seems the mass majority think minions should be the ones dealing the damage, so this build is all about that. It looks like they're about to do an update, or at least balance in the future, and it certainly seems like they're going to be giving the power to the minions, so this build could be perfect. Let's cover the build and how it's working, and then we'll talk about minion builds and their desperate needs at the end. Starting of course with the skill tree, we begin with your basic, where we put 2 points into anything you like. We're not actually using a basic just to get to the next tree, where we of course have 3 out of 3 in hewed flesh so we can generate lots of corpses, and again we have to spend 1 more point to get to the next tree, so you can put it anywhere. I just slap it into the first level of bone spear, it doesn't matter. This brings us to the next tree where it does matter. We get 1 point in blood mist, go to enhance and get ghastly. This gives us a guaranteed way to spawn 3 corpses every time we blood mist. Of course we're taking skeletal warrior mastery to improve those, and then 1 point into grim harvest just to get to fuel by death, so we have a permanent damage increaser going. We're consuming corpses by summoning or buffing skeletons, so this is going pretty much always. Down on the next tree we have 5 out of 5 in decrepify. Leveling it majorly increases the slow that it applies and also slightly increases the damage reduction, so we're up to over 25% less damage while they're affected, which is really nice. Of course we take enhance and abhorrent to get the cooldown reset and potential stun, and since we're cursing everything with that, we take 3 out of 3 in amplify damage. We'll take 3 out of 3 in Death's Embrace to improve the damage to close and reduce how much we take, and 3 out of 3 in Skeletal Mage Mastery for the same thing, improve the mages. I also have 1 point in Death's Reach. This is because we have a point left over, and I just felt this would be the most impactful point, bringing us down to the next tree where we have 1 point into Corpse Tendrils, Enhanced, and of course Plagued, so that it's generating Vulnerable every time that it triggers on targets. We actually generate a bit of Fortify in the build, so Necrotic Carapace also helps with that. On the ultimate tree we're taking Bone Storm in its completion, and all of the minion passives in the form of Bonded Essence, Death's Defense, Inspiring Leader, and Hellbent Commander. As you can see, I've got 3 levels from items here. This majorly improves the damage that your minions deal while you're close to them, so it's very important that you stay near them pretty much always. Also 3 out of 3 in Golem Mastery just to boost up the Golem too. And then we have the key passive for the last point, which is Kalen's Edict. When we don't take damage for a couple seconds, like when we're in Blood Mist, our minions gain a nice amount of attack speed. When it comes to the Book of the Dead, it's relatively interesting. We've got upgrade 2 on the Reapers. This gives them a way to generate corpses, which is very important since we need a ton of them. For the mages, we're going Cold upgrade 2. It basically gives the cold mages a way to generate another source of vulnerability. And finally, the Golem is Blood under upgrade 2. While healthy, your Blood Golem gains a massive 25% damage reduction and major damage increase. And we do not want the Golem to die, so that's the most impactful upgrade we can take. Next up then we have the Vampiric Powers, which is quite interesting. We're running the meta combo with Prey on the Weak. Meta in particular though is going to be a great way for us to generate Vampiric curses, but it's also going to turn the evade into that unstoppable dash, extending its range. That's important because we are running Flicker Step, which as we dash through targets will reduce our cooldown on our ultimate. So it actually really helps with that too. We'll be spreading Vampiric curses, so of course we want Prey on the Weak. It makes our curses turn enemies to vulnerable, and we deal more damage to vulnerable enemies. We're taking Sanguine Brace as we clear pack after pack after pack. We're generating lots of Fortify through this, and while we got Fortify for half or more of our maximum life, we actually gain crit strike chance, which is nice too. Then of course we have Coven's Fangs. For any full minion build, this just makes sense. It makes our companions deal more damage to crowd control enemies, which is happening a lot, and it gives them the chance to inflict Vampiric Curse, which is very helpful. Finally, I'm taking Anticipation to reduce the actual cooldown of our Bone Storm massively, and potentially improve its damage ever so slightly. This then brings us to our Paragon board, where, like any full minion build, you just don't have enough Paragon points to get not only everything you want in terms of like magic nodes that we're skipping in many cases, but also we can't even reach a full glyph or even legendary nodes that we would like. Minion builds demand so much in the Paragon, more than any other build type I've seen, and it's a major pain point for the build in general, where I keep saying there's stuff in the Paragon that should be in the skill tree. But let's begin with the starter board as we come right and around up to the glyph where we have Warrior. This is because I don't have level 15 Warrior. I'd rather put something that was scaling on intelligence on this board because we get more points from it. This is the only way I can get Warrior active, and you must have it because it gives your minions 30% extra armor, keeping them alive. I activate it with 25 dexterity just barely through this method, and I also come down and pick up resilience, picking up a bit of the resistance to all elements as a priority. Then we work our way up to our first board extension, which as you might expect is Cult Leader. Since we're running mages, warriors and golems, we're getting 15% times increased damage for each minion type active. It's a big damage increase. So we'll enter the board like so, coming around to Cult Leader and then going up to the right to pick up Infused Warrior and the nodes around that, working our way up tier again for the nodes around that, and finally Infused Caster for all the nodes around that too. Then we come up to the right to our glyph, which of course is Dead Razor. 40 out of 40 intelligence means we'll get the secondary effect, meaning our minions deal damage to enemies, and those enemies take scaling damage from me and our minions up to 12% times for 10 seconds. So it's a pretty important DPS increase for a minion build. Also, having it on your Cult Leader board is really important because the secondary effect is that the Paragon nodes within range get a bonus to minion damage and damage reduction modifiers. So our magic nodes around this board are actually being enhanced by that. So it must go on this board, it can't go anywhere else. At this point, we continue up to our third board, which is Hulking Monstrosity. Major increase for both health and damage for the Golem, so we definitely want that. We start at the bottom and come around to Infused Golem, picking up these nodes. We can't quite afford to get that magic node. Coming up into the right to pick up the legendary node itself, and then straight up through the rare nodes to get to the glyph socket, where of course we have Golem. This is a great board to get lots of willpower, of which I'm actually missing some because we don't have enough Paragon points to make it happen. Still, I'm able to get 39 total, and this will increase the Golem's max life and the Golem's damage in general. We'll come up to the left to pick up Frenzied Golem, very important, and all the nodes around that to enhance its damage and attack speed. Then we come to the right to leave the glyph to come pick up Borrowed Strength to enhance ourselves, and all the magic nodes around that, and down to the right to our next board, number 4. This is of course Scent of Death for the major damage reduction this is going to provide. We'll enter and head right straight to the glyph where we have Mage. This provides us with a lot of skeletal mage damage improvers, and also 35% increased resistance to all elements for all our minions, again keeping them alive. This I do have to level 15, so we're able to get to 60 intelligence around that, like so. Then we come to the right and pick up Sense of Death, and this board's complete. This brings us down to the third board where we can spend minimal amounts of points, which brings us to the final board, which is Flesh Eater, and we would love to have this specific legendary node be a nice damage increase, but we can't afford to because we need another glyph socket desperately, so we care more about that, where of course I've got control, a major damage increase for CC targets, whether they're slowed or especially stunned or frozen. So we enter the board from the left, working our way around to the glyph, putting in control, picking up the rare nodes around, getting a little bit of extra resistance to all elements. As you can see, despite the sacrifices I've made around the board to not actually pick up certain magic nodes, we can't actually afford the legendary node, whatever I do. There's just not enough points. It sucks. This then brings us to the gear section, which is an absolute nightmare. There is a load of non-negotiable things you're going to have to run, like the Ring of Mendel, like the Sacrilegious Soul, and all this leaves you with like basically no aspect options, which is just another pain point for full minions. So from the top, we have the Blood Getters to increase the Skeletal Warriors, we have this on our helm, and then we have the Dominion aspect to increase the mages on the chest. Normally this will be on the boots, but we don't have that option because we have Flicker Step. Flicker Step is massively reducing the cooldown of Bone Storm. We absolutely need this because it keeps us having Bone Storm permanently, which prevents us from dying and our minions. So it's got to go somewhere, so I just put it on the chest piece. On the gloves, we have the reanimation aspect. Your minions gain up to 40% times increased damage if they're alive for 10 seconds. So obviously we want to keep them alive as much as possible. On the legs, I have my one defensive, Shielding Storm. Of course, we've got Bone Storm active pretty much constantly, so this is the biggest damage reduction out of everything we can pick. As mentioned, we have Flicker Step, which is causing the evade to reset the cooldown of Bone Storm up to 10 seconds at a time if you're doing it through a whole group. On the wand, I've got Conceited, giving us a nice damage increase while we have a barrier active, which is basically always because of Shielding Storm, so it's a pretty big damage increase. And then on the focus, we have Grasping Veins, giving us that big chunk of crit strike chance and crit strike damage, which is pretty much always going. On the amulet, we have Frenzied Dead, which is giving our minions a major attack speed increase, which is giving them a chance to proc the Ring of Mendel as much as possible. This is based on Lucky Hit. It empowers your minions to deal sort of an explosive attack on the next hit, so attack speed and Lucky Hit is really important for your minions. Finally, we're running the Sacrilegious Soul, which is going to auto-trigger Raised Skeleton and Corpse Tendrils very often for us, and it has great affixes too. And those are the aspects. There's basically none others that I could fit in here. When it comes to the most important stats on your gear, you need as much Lucky Hit chance as you can get. So Lucky Hit chance raw on pieces, or Lucky Hit chance from a barrier while you've got that active, that works too. I use a 1 because that comes with Lucky Hit chance inherently, and you can also get Lucky Hit chance and barrier Lucky Hit chance on a focus. On your amulet, you're going to want ranks of Hellbent Commander. That's the one that's majorly improving your minion damage while you're near them. And then other than that, it's things like vulnerable damage, crit strike chance, crit strike damage, and main stats that your minions will benefit from. Defensively, it's of course the same stuff as always: total armor and damage reduction, max health, damage reduction from close and far enemies, anything you do to reduce the damage you're taking. In terms of gems, it's the same as usual. You've got your rubies for max life in your armor, you've got your crit strike damage to vulnerable enemies up in your weapons, and then it's whatever you're lacking on your resistances. I've got maxed out in poison and shadow since I think they're the most important, and out of cold, lightning and fire, I find lightning and fire come up the most. So, how's the gameplay actually work? Well, it's pretty simple. We apply Decrepify to everything always, as usual. We Bone Storm as much as possible and target a mob with Blood Golem to use its AoE ability. It sort of drains an AoE and keeps the golem alive too. We follow it in with a Blood Mist through the mobs to generate some corpses right away, and then it's just repeatedly jumping through the mobs. Usually they'll be pulled together by your auto trigger from Sacrilegious Ring, which is also auto buffing and summoning our skeletons, which is really nice. And so while we keep jumping through the packs of enemies to reset Bone Storm and, keep the vampiric curses going, we'll intentionally buff or summon more skeletons when possible or needed, Corpse Tendril to target AoE stun certain targets. When mob clearing, you should be able to have Bone Storm uptime next to 100% of the time. And that's basically it. Waiting for a few buttons to come back by keeping debuffs going on enemies, jumping around a lot and staying near your minions. The idea is to make the minions deal the damage while occasionally landing some big blows thanks to Ring of Mendel. You might be wondering, well, what happens if there's a specific mob that you need to attack, like one of those pesky shielding minions that makes everything else really tanky? Well, unlucky. This build just doesn't work for that. You can't really target a specific thing, so you have to kill everything indiscriminately because that's how minions work in this game. In single target for those final bosses, you do the same things as before, but just keep jumping through the target to keep resetting Bone Storm. You can really see here how all the sacrifices of DPS that had to happen are a problem now. Our minions finally stay alive in a fight, but the damage is too minimal. But yeah, that is full minions in Season 2. It can clear tier 100s, but those Blood Forges that are coming up that are meant to be harder, there is no chance. Minions desperately need better functionality, meaning letting us target specific enemies, like focusing a suppressor down properly. God forbid if I could manually control my, say, mages so they actually walk inside the barrier so they can actually deal damage. Minions also desperately need an update to the skill tree. So much of the stuff that's in the Paragon should be part of the skill tree, with points we already spend. We quite literally need more Paragon points than we have access to right now, so it's clearly not finished as a build. Minions in general take too much work and sacrifice to not fall over every fight. There's no room to actually get DPS in the build because you're fighting to keep them alive. I think they should completely do away with the stupid increased minion count aspects, put them in the skill tree or make them one single aspect, give us some space to work with. Truly, to me, it feels like this build has not been tested or made to work in Season 2, and we're half a year into the game's life at this point. And since this is a core concept of being a necromancer, I'm still very disappointed. Now, obviously, Adam Jackson talked about this, and it seems like they're going to address this, which is hopeful, but it's more of a question about where the power in the build should be, rather than how should we actually fix it or solve it or add mechanics and improve the mechanics of minion builds. But at least they're aware of it and talking about it, so we'll see what they do. What would you guys like to see from minions? How would you get this build as a concept to work better? What should they rebalance? For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.